Well, thank you, Aaron and Joe, for inviting me to speak here to everyone today. So before I got into my role as Cornell Cooperative Extension as the Ag 2 specialist out in Suffolk County, I did get my PhD in soil science at Iowa State. So I lived in the Midwest for a while, as did someone else I know in this room. And I did my research into biochar. On biochar, I'm just going to hand a couple of these vials out before I get started. Just a few different biochar types that I made while doing my graduate work. Is there a clicker? Or just do this then? I can use this. That's just as easy. But so Joe asked me today to speak on some to speak about biochar in general, and just some related to soil health and waste management. Or waste conversion, I don't really work on that side of things, but I will touch upon some of the work that's being done up at Cornell University by Johannes Lehmann and folks in his lab there. So just to start, how many people here have heard of biochar? Okay, basically everyone. Maybe a couple hands didn't show up. So if you haven't heard of it, hopefully this talk will give you an overview about it and its potential benefits for different environments. And then I'm just going to touch upon some of the work that we're doing on Long Island in biochar, mainly in the nursery industry right now, looking about its impact on ornamental plants. So just an overview of my talk, general, what is biochar, some of the applications and benefits, potentials for use in New York, and generally ag systems, and then including kind of with Long Island research, just generally Long Island research. I'm not going to go into very much detail at all. So to start, what is biochar? Solid co-product produced by pyrolysis, and it's intended for a soil amendment. And it's meant to improve water and nutrient retention while simultaneously sequestering carbon. So how it interacts is going to depend on the environment, and as I'll mention about feedstock, production conditions, various things. So biochar is produced from any organic material. So you can think of anything from corn residue, corn stover residue coming off the field, to different manures, to perennial grasses, to leaf litter. Any green organic material can be used to make biochar. So it goes through this process called pyrolysis. And simply, pyrolysis it's the heating or thermochemical conversion in the absence or in the presence of very little oxygen. So I have a video. I don't know. Let's try. Yeah. I don't want to just repeat what people have said very concisely and very accurately already. So this video, hopefully, if it shows up, it's by Akio Enders, who works as the research support specialist at Cornell University for Johannes Lehmann. And he does a great 1-minute synopsis of pyrolysis and just showing the research.
Pyrolysis is actually a fairly simple concept. It's very much like... Sorry, we're having some audio difficulties with my HDMI cable. Pyrolysis is...
Okay, so if it's not going to work, that's fine. You can look it up on YouTube later if you want. But like I said, it's simply taking this organic material, putting it basically in a hopper. There's various scales of production that then it's with no oxygen, it changes the chemical and physical properties of the material. Not working?
No.
That's okay. He just does a great, really concise overview of pyrolysis there. I have one more video, but I guess I'll skip that one as well. You're getting ahead of yourself here. I'm going to talk about that. Give me a minute. So biochar, it's this really carbon-rich material. It's usually about 60 to 80% carbon, and there's very small percentages of nitrogen and some other nutrients in there.
Yeah, sorry, keep going. Just nothing to see here.
Nothing to say. Okay, so with biochar, basically it becomes basically a sponge. It has macro and micro pores in it, and that's what holds on to the water and nutrients. So it's meant to be great for nutrient retention. And here we go. And the whole idea behind biochar is that it's more resistant to degradation than something like compost or mulch. So through this pyrolysis process, you're creating a material that's much more recalcitrant or resistant to degradation when it's put into the environment. So you take something, say on the left up there, of just general wood chips, and then you produce this black substance, the biochar. And from a chemical perspective, just basic chemistry, you're taking what would be the cellulose, the hemicellulose, and the lignin, the three main components of plants. You subject it to pyrolysis, so this thermochemical process, and you get this much more condensed aromatic carbon structure. So all these rings and double bonds, they're much more difficult for microbes and other organisms to break down in the soil environment. So you're taking something like compost that can be readily decomposed every year, and you need to reapply compost every year to something that's it's much more difficult to break down. So often, if people aren't really understanding that, I do this simple picture. It's like eating gummy bears is something that's very easily and quickly digestible for, say, us, to something that's much more difficult to process. It takes a long time to get the energy and the benefits from it. So over the years, the past 10, 15 years or so, biochar has blown up in the news. These are just some of the headlines we've seen. There's thousands and thousands of articles and popular press pieces about biochar because it really came into popularity really before the science was developed about it. And there's a lot we don't know about it, which has been a bit difficult to actually push to get people to adopt and to try biochar because it came out as a great, silver bullet option, like a lot of new technologies do. But then it was kind of like, let's step back and see the science and the actual benefits from it. So there's been more than a dozen books published on biochar, so there's a lot of information out there if you're looking to find more. These are just a few of them. But so we think of biochar as a new product, but actually it's a very ancient practice. It's been something that's been going on for thousands of years, largely in the Amazonian region, down in Brazil. And a lot of this work and the popularity behind biochar came out of the work of Jan Kleeman here at Cornell, and the work he did on the terra preta soils down in the Amazon. And terra preta simply means black earth or dark earths. And you have these soils that basically had remnants of indigenous people from campfires and cook stoves, leaving the burnt material and the residue just on the soil. And over time, they percolated down through the soil profile, and they basically enriched the soil and created very fertile black soils in an area of the world where you have oxasols, or very highly weathered, low fertility, low organic matter soils that don't have the best crop yield. They don't create the most favorable conditions for a plant growth. But these dark soils, and as you all know, dark colored soils typically means higher organic matter, more nutrients. So it was these dark soils right next to these highly weathered soils that it became very interesting. And this really what started biochar. And actually we see similar dark soils in Liberia, the west part of Africa and also in the Midwest. There's been some research out of Iowa into actually the prairies burning over time and leaving pieces, remnants, basically biochar in soils, and that's what made Midwestern mollisols very productive, these dark, very nutrient-rich soils. So getting at your question, what's the difference between charcoal, and biochar? I put these slides in just because I know that's a big question. People always ask me. So I started explaining what biochar is, and they're like, so how is it any different from charcoal? And really, it's the same material. It's produced under produced under different conditions, but the intended use is the real difference. So when we think about char, that's any carbonaceous residue, and it includes wildfires. That's what we think of char, just that residue from burning on the soil. Then we have charcoal, and this is something intended for use as a heating material or a cooking material, and they often put some other type of chemicals onto charcoal so we can use it for heating and cooking. It's no longer just the raw organic material. So then we get to biochar, and the idea behind biochar is specifically used as a soil amendment. So you can think of biochar basically as charcoal or char, but you're specifically applying it to the soil for some type of agronomic or environmental purpose. So a lot of times we have carbon filters or something. There's an intended environmental purpose behind biochar. So that's really the main difference there. And with biochars now, as the research has deepened and our knowledge and understanding of it has changed, we have what are now called designer biochars. And these are pretty much, we can manipulate the production conditions of the feedstuff, the organic materials we use in the beginning of the process, to change our end products. So do we want a material that's higher in surface area to capture nutrients, to be more of a sponge, to retain more water, versus something that maybe we want to put deeper down in the soil profile and sequester carbon? So we can manipulate the pyrolysis process and our starting products to change our end product and get something we want for a specific purpose. So the whole big picture benefits of biochar that everyone talks about, these long-lasting environmental benefits. Just an overview here, and this is just a schematic, if you can see, of basically biochar is really the only carbon negative, net negative technology out there. There are a lot of carbon neutral technologies, but with biochar and actually applying biochar back to the soil after you remove the carbon in, say corn stover residue, you're putting it through pyrolysis and then you're putting it back into the ground, and it's taking a much longer period of time to degrade. It becomes a net negative, carbon negative process. So those are some of the climate benefits, which I'll mention a paper that did some work on the climate side of biochar. But these are just some overview bullet points of the potential benefits of biochar. And the reason I say potential, you'll see in the following slides. But benefits for human health, improving microbial activities, general soil health improvements. But the issue is it's not a silver bullet like a lot of people in the media presented it at the beginning. I want everyone to read that quote there of the climate benefits of biochar. Annual net emissions of carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide could be reduced by a maximum of 1.8 gigatons of carbon dioxide carbon equivalent per year, and total net emissions over the course of the century by 130 gigatons without endangering food security, habitat, or soil conservation. This was a paper put out almost 10 years at this point, and they did a whole view of how much biochar could be produced or put back into the soil. And there's a video about the climate benefits as well that people can look at a later time. I won't try and show it now.
We can try.
No, I'll leave it.
Okay.
I don't want to mess around with it.
It's ready to go. I just have to type in
Okay, that's all right.
Okay.
But just realizing this is a broad slide, but realizing there is a large and a potential benefit to biochar as a carbon negative energy. And the good thing about biochar is that it's a scalable process. There are huge integrated bioenergy biochar systems. And in this process, you can gear pyrolysis producing your biochar, your solids, your bio-oils, or your syngas. So those are the three materials that come out of that pyrolysis process that I had on that initial slide. And that syngas in one of these integrated bioenergy facilities can go towards electricity production. It can go towards the grid. And then you have those bio-oils or biotars that can go to things like asphalt and supplements and those. And then that biochar is put back on the land. And these have, you can run these are largely run as called fast pyrolysis or gasification. And those are the different types of pyrolysis. And then you have something much smaller, something simply like a cooking stove. And this is something largely used in the third world. And in this, we have a process going on called slow pyrolysis. The temperatures that biochar is produced are much lower, and this kiln can actually double as a cooking stove. So in a lot of third world countries, it's been shown to reduce indoor air pollution. Instead of having a regular open fire in homes, you have a cook stove and you're producing the char residue in the little kiln while boiling a pot on top of it. And there's been benefits to actually respiratory health in certain third world nations. So one of the limiting factors about, or the barriers to kind of the expansion and adoption of biochar has been its diversity in the product we get by biochar. It's not just biochar, it's biochars. As the three vials I passed around the room, those are all biochars, but they look different. The size, the particle size is different, the color is the same, but different shapes, sizes, everything. And that impacts the interactions in the soil environment. So the resulting end products of what we say a biochar are a product that starting material, whether you're using a manure or corn stover, and then are you using fast pyrolysis, slow pyrolysis, the pyrolysis process. So here's a SEM, standing electron, images of the same feedstock produced by 4 different pyrolysis methods. And you can see in that image that the size and the shape of the end material is different. Here on the right is just a picture of all different feedstocks produced under the same pyrolysis condition. Once again, you see you get different materials. You get ones that are grayer versus dark or black. There's differences in ash content and other things there. So simply put, biochars are diverse and they're not all the same. The potential benefits are not all the same. That's the key thing. So really when I talk to people at biochar, it's like I say, what are you, oh, that's not the slide I wanted. I'll have it up there later. But what are some of the optimum properties when you're thinking about applying it to the soil? You want something with a high surface area, right, to capture water and nutrients, something with a high porosity as well. And biochars generally have a high carbon content, but you want to produce biochars that are low in ash and low in volatile organic compounds. Those can be released and have potentially negative impacts. So just some of the things to think about. I had a couple slides just because Joe had asked me to talk about the waste side of biochar, and this is, I don't work at all with dairy manure or manure-based biochars, but there is a lot of work, and I know that's a big thing in upstate New York, with using the newer, and kind of how can we change the waste stream or get a value added product potentially for all this waste. And biochar has a big potential there to put more money back in the hands of farmers if we can, and get waste off of farms. If we can convert it to biochar and put it back in the soil in a different form, that would then stay in the soil for long periods of time. So this is just some points that there's ongoing research, and there's a fair amount of information out there on all types of manure derived biochars, and this is a really good source of phosphorus and potentially replacing other synthetic forms of phosphorus in the environment. So you're not only getting the carbon benefits, but you're also getting phosphorus return there, and it will persist. And one of the really good benefits of biochar is it removes odor from the environment because it's like a sponge. It will just eliminate, if you mix it in, it eliminates a lot of odor. And some of the work we did we're doing on Long Island, we were inoculating it with fish emulsion. And once we added the biochar into our fish emulsion and compost tea extract, you could no longer smell any fish. It was actually really, really nice. So this is, again, the work coming out of Johannes Lehmann's lab, and a lot of the efforts he's doing to look at dairy manure derived biochars, and just some values that they put associated with this work. So I just suggest that you look up this short article they have there in the Cornell newsletter, that actually, when working with a local company in Ithaca, they could replace some of the organic fertilizer with this dairy manure biochar fertilizer. So it's getting back to this. What are you trying to solve with adding biochar? Don't just, why do you add fertilizer? Why do you add lime? Right? Because you're trying to fix a problem, you're trying to amend the soil to improve the conditions. So it's the same thing with biochar. Do we just broad scale apply it? Or, maybe if we're thinking about just carbon sequestration, but when you're looking at it as a soil amendment and wanting to improve something in the environment, you want to think about, are you looking to improve your issues with compaction, with structure, with pH? You need to hold more water in the soil or nutrients. So thinking about, why are you adding biochar? What's the purpose? We're not just going to buy something to hang on to it and not actually see a benefit there. So it's, and this gets at a lot with the designer biochars. Overview of biochar and soil health. Generally, if you really, there are a host of benefits with biochar. Soil health, a lot I've already mentioned, but potential to capture nutrients, and reduce greenhouse gas emissions, increase water retention, alter pH, cation exchange capacity, sequester carbon, host of benefits to the soil environment. And they're both direct and indirect benefits out there. So I've listed just some of the references associated with these findings and some of the work I did during graduate school. I've been really interested in biochar's ability to improve soil water, and specifically plant available water, so that water in the profile that plants can uptake and actually use. And we know that biochars impacts vary depending on soil type, is one of the big factors. And just environmental conditions in general change how it interacts. And the other thing I was interested in very much in grad school, and still am, is this idea of biochar aging or time. The fact that the material, when it's produced and initially applied to the soil, the impacts are not the same 10, 20, potentially 50 years down the line, because the material is breaking down. So because biochar research is it's relatively new, we still are looking at long-term impacts of biochar on the environment. Once you apply biochar, it stays there. So just knowing that its impacts today might be different 5, 10 years down the line. Biochar is becoming a lot more available. There's a lot of companies out there you can actually purchase biochar from. You can purchase it in a small 1-pound bag all the way up to 1-ton pallets of char. So there's companies both on the East Coast, the West Coast, across the country doing this. There's biochar being produced at universities. And there's a lot of people who have interest in make it themselves. And a great way is to use an old oil drum, recycle that. There are a couple guys experimenting with making biochar on Long Island and selling it to their friends and colleagues across the industry there. So its availability has definitely increased over the years, and the cost has gone down a little bit, but it's still relatively expensive compared to things like compost and manure, things you can get for relatively inexpensive or for free. And the issue is essentially product consistency. I've mentioned to you that biochars are diverse, and you don't necessarily know what is the biochar product you're getting when you buy it from a commercial outlet. So just knowing what type of material you're actually getting. And thinking about transportation is very expensive as well. So can you source locally when possible? There are a lot of local suppliers. I know there's some directly in Ithaca, we have some on Long Island, but more ag places, ag distributors, and horticulture distributors are having biochar blends. They're often mixed with compost or other things. So where biochar might work best, if you have never been to Long Island, this is what our typical soil profile looks like on Long Island. Very sandy, much lighter in color than soils in upstate New York. Very different properties. And actually, biochar has been shown to have the greatest benefit in sandy, low organic matter soils. So that's why I've been interested in keep doing work after graduate school on Long Island, because there's some real potential to improve the soils down there. This is a general map for New York State, and this map was made actually by one of my colleagues at Iowa State, who does a lot with different modeling platforms. And he did a full meta-analysis of the literature of biochar and mapped the entire United States and where you would potentially see the greatest benefits of biochar to crop production. So I just pulled the map out for New York State in general. And where you see green, the darker the green color, the greater the potential for biochar to have a positive impact in these soils. And this will take into account things like the organic matter, the texture. So there's some areas on Long Island, not going to zoom in there, but generally there's various pockets across New York State where you would see a benefit of biochar. And if anyone's interested, I can get the publication link for this if they want to read into this fine a bit more. So I'm just quickly going to show some pictures of how biochar is applied at the field scale. A lot of it similar to lime, how you would apply a lime, and biochar can have very similar impacts to lime because it will raise the pH of the soil because it's generally more alkaline. So just broadcast applying and incorporating. These are some research plots we had there at the agronomy farm in Iowa of just different application rates and incorporating them there. For landscapers or the homeowner, radial trenching, vertical mulching, air spading, all those methods, anything you do, like you incorporate compost into the environment. You can top dress as well and just also apply before you plant a tree or whatever in an area. So wrapping up, just some starting research over the past year through a grant funded by Northeast Sustainable Ag and Research Education, looking at biochar to retain nitrogen and improve water retention in nursery production on Long Island. We have a big issue with nitrogen leaching and pollution entering ground and surface waters around Long Island. There's a lot of initiatives to reduce nitrogen fertilizer use and pesticide use in general. We have a lot of restrictions on what can be applied both in the agricultural environment and homeowners, just because of us having an aquifer under the island. So it's a very different geology on Long Island than the rest of New York State. So I received this funding from SARE to do some research with the nursery specialist at CCE. And we were looking at different high value ornamental crops. This is an example of boxwood in container production, and this is a high value crop a lot of people plant in their landscape. And we use that along fence lines and other things. So we were looking at different rates of application, different types of incorporation into container production, because they're normally grown in containers for several years before they're bought by landscapers and then put out into yards and everything. So just some general pictures for you to see. We're boxwoods and that's switchgrass there, and then we're also doing container trials on California privet. So just some pictures. We're evaluating both the above ground and below ground biomass. So just pictures from recently we did some structured sampling, and we're looking at the roots of these different treatments here. And then we've expanded it to working on farm with several of the nursery growers, both on the north and south forks of Long Island, and looking at different rates. In this field trial, we are looking at Douglas fir Christmas trees, and in the other fields, we're looking also at California privet, basically the first 3 years of growth in these fields. So this is just some overview pictures of when we applied it, incorporated it into the soil, and what it looks like. We also installed lysimeters in our different treatments to be able to capture any nutrients leaching off or down through the soil after rainfall events. And they use some drip irrigation, but we mainly collect samples after heavy rainfall events. This is what a first year California privet field. You can't really see it with this light, but you can see little about 10-inch high seedlings here, and all those flags are all over. So that's an up close picture, and just after we incorporated the biochar into the field. This is installing the lysimeters here, and then we installed soil moisture and soil water potential sample or probes into the field, so we can monitor soil moisture over time, and we get readings every 2 minutes. So we have a lot of data to go through at the end of the year. So that's just a picture there of some of the work I'm doing on Long Island with biochar, and generally just some final concluding slides that it's important to remember that biochar is not the same, that you need to think about the biochar that you're using and what soil are you applying to. So think about the environmental conditions and some of the potential benefits of biochar, because it's not definite. Just like with any material, it's not definite. There's always other factors that go into how positive or negative in the environment. So just some of the things I mentioned, and remembering it's another tool in the toolbox, as Aaron has said before. It's not a one size fits all. It's not a silver bullet. So think about it as a potential thing that might be able to be used in various settings, but not necessarily a broad scale application for use of it. Some things biochar can definitely not do. Like I said, fix everything. It can reduce fertilizers and pesticide applications, but that's largely attributed to its potential benefits to improve soil health and the other things around the system scale of things. So it can't replace fertilizers completely. It just doesn't have enough other nutrients. It's really a good source of carbon. And it won't introduce any toxic compounds to your environment if you know where it's coming from, what was the starting feedstock, what conditions was it under. So just some things to keep in mind in general. So with that, I went over by a couple of minutes. Sorry about that, but I tried to be quick and brief overview. But if anyone has any questions,